Okay, what you see here is a classic old-school Russian summer dish called Okroshka. And let me tell you, this is one of the most bizarre foods you'll ever see. Not only is this a cold dish made from a fizzy fermented bread drink called Kvass, or sometimes it's made with Kefir actually, which is arguably even weirder, this dish, which is somewhere between a soup, a salad, and maybe cereal, is actually surprisingly tasty, it's very healthy, and it's super refreshing. Plus you can learn a lot about Russian food. Let's make some okroshka and I will explain. The main ingredients are fresh veggies, boiled potatoes and eggs, some type of protein, garden herbs, and the aforementioned probiotic drinks, and we'll get to everything in a second. First, the veggies. The classic choice here would be radishes and cucumbers. Like most ingredients for this dish, you want to dice these very finely. Next, we have our boiled potatoes. I suggest going for a waxy type rather than a starchy one and making sure not to overcook them so they don't completely turn to mush. Now here I have good old hard-boiled eggs. I like to cook them for about 8.5 minutes and then drop them in cold water. That's how I like my eggs. These ones will be sliced, but you can of course just chop them up as well. Next up is our protein. And if you're wondering why I'm using this type of very low-key sausage here, let's talk about this for a second. Traditionally, okroshka would come with whatever type of leftover meat people had at home, usually beef or chicken. But then in Soviet times, with industrialization, these very mystery meat type processed sausages got very popular. They were cheap, they were accessible, they tasted good enough, and that's why you'd increasingly see them replace the meats in okroshkas all over the Soviet Union. I'd say they're somewhat close to a mortadella or bologna. Either way, dice up the meat or skip it entirely for a vegetarian option. Last but not least, we'll prep some garden herbs. And this is actually worth talking about. Spring onions, dill, and parsley are the holy trinity of Russian cuisine. These three, with a dollop of sour cream, are absolutely essential ingredients in Russian cooking. So with all our ingredients prepped, we'll add a bit of everything into a bowl and then pour over some ice-cold kvass. Before we garnish with a sliced egg, the aforementioned sour cream and greens, salt and pepper to taste, as well as some ice cubes. I realize maybe the kvass part deserves a bit of an explanation here. So this, it might look a little bit like beer, but this is kvass. Kvass is a fermented fizzy beverage originally made from stale rye bread. That's right. It's the most traditional Russian drink there is. It goes way back. I actually remember seeing people selling kvass on the streets when I was a kid, especially during summertime. Kvass lost quite a bit of popularity when Coca-Cola and other sugary beverages became widely available, but apparently it's really making a comeback and it's becoming more popular once again as people are kind of growing more interested in traditional food and also healthier food, because kvass is a fermented probiotic beverage. You might be able to find it at a Russian specialty store, but you can also try to make it yourself. Here's how. To make a basic, simple ghetto kvass, you start out with rye bread, and it has to be dry. If you only have fresh rye bread, make sure to drop it in the oven at low temperature for like 45 minutes to dry it out, or even just put it in the toaster. Just make sure it is dry. We'll only need two more things, which is sugar and raisins. That's right. So add the sugar to a jar first and then dissolve it in a bit of hot water. To this, we're adding our dry bread and then covering everything with room temperature water. That's because we're now adding unwashed raisins. And we're not actually doing that for the flavor as much as we're doing it for the natural yeasts that tend to collect on the surface of the raisins. Hot water, of course, would kill that yeast. Now we'll cover the kvass with a cheesecloth and let this ferment for about 3 to 5 days, stirring at least once daily until it's tangy and slightly fizzy. Let me add that for a really great kvass, you would actually need a special type of yeast and also a starter. It is a fermented product after all, which is why it's fun to make, but I actually advise to just go for the store-bought version if you can. Let's actually try one and see how it tastes. That didn't work. Okay. Nice hiss. Kvass. Malty, complex, slightly tangy, Very refreshing. Definitely a little bit like a dark beer, but non-alcoholic. But you know, if you are not convinced by the Kvass, let me show you a more home-friendly but equally weird alternative. Mix 2 parts kefir with 1 part sparkling water and season with a bit of salt and pepper. Assemble your bowl with all the ingredients just like we did before and add in your kefir mix. And now this, my friends, is not the world's weirdest bowl of cereal, although that is how it looks, but a more modern take on the old school Okroshka, which was popularized in the 20th century and became many people's favorite. Now, if you ask me, I personally definitely prefer the kefir version. Kvass is definitely a very interesting product. You should try it if you haven't, but you know, like it does go well with Okroshka, but like, I don't know. If you like it, good for you. Hope you guys learned something today. Let me know if you would actually try this slightly bizarre dish or if you already have. And I'm gonna see you in the next video.
This video was brought to you by Andong's epic Patreon supporters. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the bell for weekly food inspiration from all over the world.